about the Council of Nine, right? And so these families that are so integral to the foundational expression of this dimension, there are 9 of. You were close with 8.
I was trying
There's
to recall.
actually,
I saw you
there's
mouth there, and
actually,
I'm like, okay.
yeah. Yeah. And there's like kind of and I don't want to say hybrid in the way that we typically think about hybrid is individuals who are associated with Bashar's information, but the 9th is kind of a hybrid one. Um, uh, that's associated with the movement that we have going on right now for ourselves. And one of the things that showed up for me as well as part of all that is the concept that all of us collaboratively in this dimension we've chosen this shift. We've chosen this movement for ourselves, all of us, and we're involving other individuals from other dimensions, but it's not them that are driving this shift for us. It's us. It's our shift. We're the ones that chose it. All of us collectively, the collective consciousness in this dimension, we're the ones that chose this shift for us. And so as we do that, there are other aspects of us that exist in other dimensions that have had experiences that are close to what we're having as we do this, like the Sasani individuals. And so they connect with us through consciousness to help to guide us, because their experiences are
And now we're on again, and we have Chuck Crom, and he has some good information to tell us about.
so yeah. So I was chatting with Ray, and a few other individuals, but and I'm kind of beyond most of it right now, but my life was so busy for a while. There was, how symbolism works, so I had so much large change going on at one time. So I was moving. So I was moving my living arrangement to a place that I liked better. There were large changes happening at the place that I was employed, that I had to go and train in so I could bring it back and train the rest of the individuals that were there. And I had physical things that were going on, large, had oral surgery and a whole variety of things that were happening in that regard. There are all sorts of things that were showing up in my outer environment that were talking about changes, and I could feel the inner stuff that was happening also with me. And you know how sometimes when that stuff kind of happens, for me anyway, sometimes I pull away from interactions a little bit because I want to focus more inwardly. And so I did that for several weeks. And part of it was just kind of natural too. I had the surgery stuff, which, made it difficult to articulate for a while. So I was naturally quiet as a result of that. Had some other stuff go on health-wise also, that did the same thing. Yeah, there were a variety of things. And my dream state, for a while now, my dreams have primarily been focused around me exploring probable me's. I'll be exploring other ways that I'm expressing myself on other versions of the planet, with sometimes similar individuals, sometimes other individuals. Sometimes the employment that I have is similar. Sometimes it's not, a variety of mixes. And so, yeah, there was a lot of activity, for me, for a while now, I have like the hiring me on my shoulder, I kind of call it, where I'll walk around and it's like that communication seems to be happening pretty much all day long. And so as all that was going on, there was a change that was there. I didn't recognize the tone like I had And so it was shifting because I was shifting. And I didn't really know what it was all about. I could feel that there was movement that was going on. I wasn't really sure how it was going to express itself. I'm still really not sure how it's going to express itself. There's increased information I have. It's kind of like an overarching idea. That overarching idea for me has now grown to encompass more. So there's like a pulling back and a viewing of all the various components of information, knowledge, whatever it might happen to be, and an understanding of that as a cohesive whole, maybe I could say, in a way that was different before. And I found that I was exploring certain things, like for the past year and a half, 2 years. It seems this cycle has probably been running where it's kind of been tied up in some regard now, and there's like a broader understanding of what it was about. And a big part of it was that a broader understanding of things. So yeah, so it's been interesting. So I know that beginning tonight and moving forward, I'll begin then to understand a little bit more about what that means for those expressions of the deeper parts of me, for the connection that I have there, and how that expression takes place. But I don't know specifically what that's going to be yet. It's kind of like a exploration yet for me. So yeah, it'll be interesting to find that out.
Sounds like you've dug a little deeper into the well.
Yeah, there's like it's like so all of us, are focused in this physical experience. And so we have an understanding that's associated with that focus. And then there's that other part of us that sees a much wider picture and puts all of that within context. Said, yes, okay, that's valid, but it exists within all of this as well. And so it's like more of that occurred, is what it feels like.
And you started integrating that into.
Yes, that's kind of what it seems like, is
Yeah,
that
right,
I
right.
started to integrate that,
Mhm.
and got some information. Actually was led also to some other sources. Ray mentioned something quite interesting when Patrick was sharing information about something that Seth identified and another source has identified too, and has popped up with me through this movement about what were termed families of consciousness, particular types of energies that we align with in a couple of different ways, that color our experience maybe in a couple of different ways, and are showing themselves a little more strongly within this shifting period than what they had previously, in recognizable ways. So it feels like some of that will be part of what's shared tonight too. And
You know,
that's
there's
where
there's a
uh,
group.
I made the comment to Ray in the last couple of days regarding the tall white interaction type of thing. Actually, all of this, the interaction that we're all involved in, or I have been for the past, whatever it's been now, 2 years, and I'm not sure about all you guys, with extraterrestrial type of expressions, is a part of that template, I guess I'll say.
Yeah, because you've been doing new explorations of energy for months and months. You're like, yeah, I'm in contact with something, but I'm really not sure where it's going or what it is yet, so I'm going to feel it out. I mean, that came through in a being of light um, session,
Yeah.
from before.
But Chuck, is it not all of it is another galactic source?
No, what it's really about is a broadening understanding of the unlimited nature of me, which means the unlimited nature of everybody. You know, one of the things that came through really strongly is the strength of the tendency we have to singularize, I guess I can use that word, create one, ourselves. In other words, you know, instead of looking ourselves as an ocean of, I'll just use this analogy, water molecules or the atmosphere full of molecules of air, where there is really no separation, we have a tendency, because of our experience here, to think in terms of packages. And we utilize that a lot. Nothing wrong with it, but we utilize that a lot. But the concept is that, as a lot of other individuals have said, you know, we're not only the focus here, we're not only the oversoul that this focus flows from, but we're all of existence, and we're all of that at one time. And so the awareness of, you know, when we talk about various races that are focused in other dimensions, those are focuses of us. You know, those are expressions of us in other dimensions. And that's, of course, why, partially why, not that connectivity doesn't happen every place, but why that connection happens so readily is because they're other expressions of us. And so there are more and more of those that are showing up in relationship to this particular shift, because we're widening our awareness of ourselves. And because we're widening our awareness of ourselves, we're dropping a lot of those veils to the awareness of other things that are happening in the vastness of ourselves, that it's sometimes very difficult to wrap our minds around.
That fits really well with my experience with the tall white that came to me.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting expression, and what was kind of interesting about it too is that as this information about the various, and you know, so one of the ways that it first showed up for me, Ray, was, you know, there's been a lot of talk lately about the Council of Nine, right? And so these families that are so integral to the foundational expression of this dimension, there are 9 of. You were close with 8.
I was trying to recall. I saw you mouth that, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. There's yeah, and there's like kind of a, and I don't want to say hybrid in the way that we typically think about hybrid as individuals who are associated with Bashar's information, but the 9th is kind of a hybrid one. That's associated with the movement that we have going on right now for ourselves. And one of the things that showed up for me as well as part of all that is the concept that all of us collaboratively in this dimension we've chosen this shift. We've chosen this movement for ourselves, all of us, you know, and we're involving other individuals from other dimensions, but it's not them that are driving this shift for us. It's us. It's our shift. We're the ones that chose it. All of us collectively, the collective consciousness in this dimension, we're the ones that chose this shift for us. And so as we do that, there are other aspects of us that exist in other dimensions that have had experiences that are close to what we're having as we do this, like the Sasani individuals. And so they connect with us through consciousness to help to guide us, because their experiences are like where we're headed with our experience. You know how Bashar will say, when people ask him, what do you actually see, you know, as an individual, as an expression in their dimension, in what they now term themselves to be quasi-physical, or whatever term they might use, right? Which is the expression that we're headed towards. What I've become familiar with is that as we move into the the fullness of that movement, we'll be able to explore that area that we call transition now, that movement, that action that occurs when people leave here. We'll walk through that like it's our living room. We'll walk through dream time and understand how to use it, just like it's any other part of our experience. We'll be able to visit other dimensions in a knowing way. We'll be able to utilize consciousness in a very open and free way compared to what we do now, because it's what we've chosen to do. And now it's like the releasing throes of all the packaging that we're so used to.
And we get to help other races do that as a galactic partner. So
Yeah, it's always like that. It's always that consciousness is always interacting with itself, and sharing information with itself. And it's so cool, isn't it? How, when you do this, it's like those other aspects of consciousness in terms of the idea of time have already been waiting, you know,
yeah,
knowing that, these moments of ours within what we consider to be the flow of time were going to occur within that idea, right? And so they were in that sense then waiting so that when we reached a certain place, they could begin to share that information with us, because we got to a place where we could understand it, where before it wouldn't have made no sense to us.
it,
In the 1800s, how many people could you talk to about any of this
yeah,
stuff?
and that resonates just so incredibly well. And that's why, the tall white who connected with me, he did not want that role, but that's how it needed to flow. And he said that we have to ease humans into us, because just what you were saying earlier, he says, because as you ascend, you will be conscious of our emanations. So before you become aware of us, we need to make you aware of us so we can do this on our terms.
Well, what's interesting is that, we all know from regular, I'll call it that, regular, normal, non-metaphysical life, right? That if you put somebody in a situation that they're totally unfamiliar with, that it's very confusing for them. Sometimes it's traumatizing to them, right? So that's what all this help is about. That's what individuals who've been exploring like we're about, and us sharing that information is all about, is about helping everybody else so that as this movement occurs on the planet, individuals aren't traumatized,
Yeah.
because, when things start happening in your life that are strange, that you can't explain, because, the 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 buffering between you and the rest of you is becoming more and more permeable, in that way of saying things, right? You have to have individuals around you that can explain those phenomenon to you, because otherwise individuals very readily, I think, go to more negative types of explanations. They start blaming it on the stories that have cropped up in our civilization that have got negativity tied to them, instead of understanding that it's part of a process of opening up to parts of yourself that, even though this is you, you don't know that it's you. And it happens, and it gives you experiences that are much different than what you've been used to, for, in terms of time, many thousands of years, right?
Yeah. How true.
In this 3D reality, uh, you can map the processes that the people around you are going through and normal understanding of their experience of their lives. And as they get confused, like you were saying, because things are beginning to happen at large, they need something to try to stabilize them and to tell them that's okay. That's okay. That's not a negative thing. That's not a bad thing. Uh, and a little bit of a wider perspective so they can start trying to analyze that's happening from a slightly different frame than they used to have. I personally have that in my experience every day because I live with my mother-in-law, and she's 82, 83, and she's experiencing that permeability without having any kind of metaphysical background.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, she lands in my house
Yeah.
where both Michelle and I have those kind of perspectives. Uh, and of course, it is not about, it is identical, I feel, as the guidance that we're receiving from higher realms that is just giving the tidbits that we are prepared to move into, and not much more than that. Uh, like when she talks to me about, her fairy experience and things disappear and reappear, or things get consumed, and what is that about? And my vision of my sister, and she keeps coming and she keeps, deceased, of course, sister.
Thanks, Patrick.
In this particular sense, somebody that was just like 6, 7 years old when she passed. And I try to explain to her a different concept of taking a look at that, basically. Why do I see her? And then the minute that I put my focus, she disappeared. She goes poof. And then I don't see her for weeks. And I've been trying to explain to her, she's always there. Always, always. It's just you immediately go into trying to explain something. And as you lose your focus from letting it be, okay, then of course, you're in a different place. And things of that sort. Very, very similar to me connecting to a guide. And, they're just trying to give me the next level that I can in some way widen. I like that word, Chuck, widening.
Yeah. Right.
Into, basically. Uh, and you just put little things, and the person comes back. I see it all the time with her. She comes back a couple of days later and she asks the next little question, and the next little question, and how could that be this way? I noticed this, and you just address that little question a little bit
Yeah.
more.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go. Yeah, that's, and it reminds me, what she's going through about, and, when you think about the concept of, what we can term trauma, maybe it's not that tough, but, when you have individuals who have an older parent, like you guys have, that don't have the understanding you do, and they start tying into other timelines, and talking to individuals from other periods in their life, like it's happening right now, and individuals who don't have this understanding, their boat is strongly rocked with that stuff, and so they involve healthcare providers and all sorts of stuff,
No, it gets
and
crazy.
there's all
I
sorts of
have,
trauma,
Chuck, I have
emotional.
that too with my mother. She's 10 years older, 95 almost.
Yeah, yeah,
And she is traumatized by the things that she sees, that she's actually tormented. She's focused on her traumas and the things that those traumas have brought to her at this stage. And she
yeah,
sees other worlds clearly.
sure, yeah,
It's
yeah.
so,
And the idea is that, we don't yet, or because we're not aware, like in a number of, we'll say, much more ancient cultures, and it doesn't even have to be that ancient, but they would teach the people, that as they were growing, these types of connections, and that would be a real thing for them. So when it happened in a more open way when they were older, it's not like it was unknown. Here, that word crazy is thrown around, like like crazy.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. We have this, my mother being very religious, through her life, the
Sure.
concept of devil, evil, and all these kinds of things
Yes.
worked
Yes.
very hard. She's Catholic, by the
Yeah.
way. And the remarkable thing is that she will tell me about her visions, and I asked her, well, who could it be that you saw? And she will say, that's like the devil. And she'll recognize that, but she still interacts with it. It's just
Sure.
amazing.
Yes.
It's an
Yeah.
amazing thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, different levels of how people react to it because they're tied up to their belief structures and
Right.
their trauma.
Yeah. You know, and it takes,
Bye, Heidi.
see you later, Heidi. It takes, experiences, it's great. Having information is fine. And, having stories and examples and things like that from other individuals is all great. But as you have your own experiences, then it helps to bridge that, so that it becomes, real, for you. Um, and and then you approach it in a much different way, like we all know. It's not just concepts and ideas any longer. It's an actual experience, that you have. And when you share then with other individuals as you help them to understand situations, I think the strength maybe, or the veracity, or whatever you want to say, the impact of that sharing is greater because it comes from a different place. It's not just somebody who's read it in a book, who's saying something, oh yeah, this individual says this, it's like there's a different energy that comes with it because it has an understanding behind it. It's not just, oh, I read this here, this might be what's going on, you know.
Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, I and back to my tall white experience, they told me they chose me because I listen.
Well, yeah,
But I
it's
mean
like,
yeah, I mean it's not so I can do things, but because I actually pay attention to what they are saying. They're not, going through all of this and densifying so they can do language, for crying out loud, of all the things. Hi, Bruce. But, but if they're going to do it, they want to make sure they get some value and some connection out of it. So,
well, I think that a lot of times for them, the value is the connection itself.
well, and
Um,
I'm thinking
when
you
you
can
think
do this
about
too.
Seth and other individuals, really, when you think about it, the individuals that are drawn to that information are individuals that will listen. They're willing to explore themselves in that way. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there at all. And some, maybe regardless of who we're talking about, whether it's Seth or Elias or Bashar or Abraham or whoever, maybe dip their toe for a little while and realize not for me right now, you know, and
But I'm
maybe they
thinking,
never go back to it. Maybe
yeah,
they do.
as much as you are around water in those areas where, there are lots of trees and forests and energies, I'm thinking you can bring in the tall whites as well, because they're all going to look for people to connect with so they can learn, because there's so many nuances, because they never really cared. It's like, they did their thing and they didn't care what political party people went for. They didn't care what soft drink they went to. And now all of a sudden they have to start caring, and it's all completely novel to them,
Hmm.
because they didn't even know half of these categories really existed, because it didn't pay them any mind, and now all of a sudden they have to deal with them.
So when
So
you say caring, you're talking about the tall whites in that.
yes,
So
they are.
describe to me what define that for me when you say caring.
Well, I explained it um to Luis earlier. It's like you're in charge of a huge buffet for a corporate gathering. You don't care who needs what. You don't care who's gluten free. You don't care who's allergic to seafood or peanuts. You don't care if people eat it all. Your job is to put it all out there. But you do need to know all of those dietetic requirements, because that's part of the process flow that you have to go through to make sure everything goes the way it's supposed to. But when it comes down to it, you don't need to know their name. You don't need to know anything about them. You just need to know, I need to have these many gluten-free desserts, that kind of stuff. So they don't care. They're more like that. that manager of the buffet. They could give a shit if you're learning anything, if you're having a good time, if this is a good seminar. They don't care if you gun down people in the parking lot after that. They're focused on their process, and anything outside of that, they don't care about. It just doesn't concern them because it's not in there now. They're only focused on the process and the flow. And if it doesn't affect that, then it doesn't exist for them.
I think there may be another layer to that. They understand what's relevant,
Yeah,
and they're not interested in what's not relevant.
and they're not interested in being physical unless it's for their own benefit. That's why they like the mists and the fog, because they can appear in the form that is comfortable for them without having to interact with humans and other stuff.
Hmm.
And they
Yeah.
were around before Earth. But that's what they do. They said that's our role. They have no physical form unless they want to have one. And they said that the spirit world is their comfy armchair. That's where they like to
Yeah.
reside. And they don't they said we don't share information except with ourselves
Hmm.
unless it's necessary. And if unless you're in a higher vibrational state and you have a desire to look, then you will never know. Because it's not like I called them in today and I got chastised a little bit. We see no reason for this contact. I mean, it's purely logical, other than your curiosity. And, they're kind of like, that's really not what we're here for. I'm like, oh, yeah, don't dial 911 unless you got an emergency, because they'll respond. They gave me the permission slip on how to contact them, and I tried it today just because I was curious. And he came in, and he wasn't. It's not like they were displeased. They call it incongruities. They don't have negative aspects. They have flow, and then they have things that don't flow as well as what they're supposed to. And they have a knack for seeing, grasping things in an instant, like a galaxy in an instant, and knowing where all the support is needed and what kind it should be and how it's going to fit in. And then they just all do it. There's no planning or anything like that. It's just everybody sees it. And when they want to know something, they can switch individual consciousness with any of the other tall whites. So it'd be like you say, oh my gosh, look at this log. It's got this picture of this dude on it. And you say, hey, look at this. That personality comes in, takes over your body, says, goes back to its body. Hey, that was really cool. I'm so glad you showed that to me. So they have a group consciousness, but only as necessary. It's freaking weird. And it's very intriguing. I mean, can you imagine if you could trade consciousness with anybody on Earth who needed to see or might be interested in what you're doing and then just snap back and they get a full range of your experience? So then you have this together. It's like it it's been eye-opening.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they said they are support and maintenance and advisors as well. The trivialities of humanity are below our level of understanding, but we accept all as valid. We are not curious as we have all relevant info we need. There is art in our flow and practices, and it is part of our being.
Yeah, I know that there's been a variety of sources that I've been associated with that, I've talked about there's vast areas of consciousness that have no experience with physical manifestation whatsoever. And the idea is for that reason, to use a word that we're familiar with, foreign to them. You know, they
Yeah.
they don't, they're not familiar with the various ideas that we're expressing, you know, within these types of experiences, because they haven't uh, they haven't had those experiences themselves. And you know, I think there's great, if I can use the word, areas of consciousness, you know, in that infinite sea of consciousness that are like that, where they have no idea as far
Yeah.
as physical reality.
They said that, and they gave me lots of notes, and I did a 10-minute channeling session. They said the choice of sharing is novel to us in ways, as we are like water and go where reality takes us and find our level of being. We do not seek to understand why anyone would withhold anything needed by another. We do not need to understand those things which are not us. We merely need to know of them to take them into account as necessary, like having an extra chair available in case unexpected guests arrive. I'm just kind of freaking out on all this. It was just amazing. Well, you know, how can it not be, right? I'm just amazed by all this. And Bruce is a longtime Sethi. He was with us earlier in the Seth meeting with Milo and Jenny and
Cool. Yeah,
Scott and Laura,
nice.
who aren't here. Bruce, are you interested in participating in the channeling? Because to say to, I would imagine is going to come through. We've just been gabbing.
Whole life is a channeling, but I'm interested in meeting interesting people.
Yay.
Yeah.
And speaking of being from Minnesota, Bruce is in Minneapolis.
Oh, hey, Bruce, Duluth.
Oh, my son is going to school up there.
UMD or where?
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah.
I'm gonna refill my tea and grab some ice.
Go
I'll be
for it.
right back. If you guys want to get acquainted, and then Chuck, I'm assuming you're still interested in bringing to say to.
Sure, sure.
Yay!
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like
The heck. Yeah, I lived in Little Canada for a little while and St. Louis Park for a bit, and then Bloomington. I finished up my undergrad and did graduate work down there. And too many cars down there for me. Oh. Too much traffic. I've gotten to a place. I used to think that it was too many people, but I've realized that it's not really the people. I don't mind the people. It's what the traffic does with the energy of the people that that I don't connect with so well. So I like places that are. I was born here too, and that helps. But I like the pace here. You know, of course, you can set your own pace. But, yeah, I like it. I haven't visited for a while actually down that direction.
So
What part are you in, Bruce?
Crystal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
Yeah.
kind of work at home, so I don't deal with the traffic either.
Oh yeah, there you go. That works out well.
Good choice. Good choice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have been in a number of areas that over a period of time, the amount of traffic has increased significantly, and
Agreed.
it changes everything, you know. It's totally different from,
It doesn't stop me from looking for myself, however.
well,
No,
you could
right.
do that from anywhere, even when you're driving the
Absolutely.
car. You could.
Especially since you don't have to go any place to do it. It's right there. Hi, how you doing? Been looking for me, I understand.
You're tracking. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a beautiful thing. Channeling, that's all we do, right? That is the essence of our
That is
existence.
it.
Yeah, that is it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's nice to connect with aspects of ourselves. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. It's very nice. You know,
It's like
That's nice.
it's
Go
like
ahead,
good
Bruce.
like good nutritious food.
Yeah, well, there's that resonance that comes from connection.
I think it's rather artistic too.
Yeah. Are you a musician as well? I see, like,
I am a musician.
Couple of guitars
yeah,
back
a
there.
couple of guitars back there.
Yeah.
That's it's just a hobby, or were you a musician
Yeah,
formally?
it's just a hobby. I
I
kind of,
see.
I'll do a few solos for the church, but
I see.
Ah,
I see.
God, what kind of a church could a spiritual person go to? That's a pretty good question.
That's a good question.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do
You
you
know,
care
I
to
know that
address that
well.
question?
I have the same thing happen up here. In fact, it used to be a spiritualist church and they changed it. They used to have an individual, the pastor, quote unquote, used to give readings to people.
Yeah, I used to
And
do.
yeah. And, you know, when I first started exploring stuff with a group of people, this was 2000, it was at that place. And it was very cool because there were a lot of people that were attending at the time, and various groups had been deeply into things like channel information, UFO stuff, Sufism, Buddhism, shamanism, individuals who had a close bond with nature, all sorts of things. So it was a great growing environment to explore what I was exploring with myself, because I was there every weekend for years, and that was the environment. It seemed natural, you know. It wasn't like it was a foreign thing to do at all, because I was in this environment where these people had already been doing it for so many years, some of them, and it was so cool. You know, things happened so rapidly during that time period. It was pretty neat. Individuals who had been familiar with Seth, because there were lots of people there who were 20 years older than me, you know, and they'd been familiar with Seth since the time it came out.
And that is to give Chuck the opportunity of maybe channeling the Setu here today. If he is so inclined, of course.
Well, and I'm not sure what, you know, I'm familiar with you guys to some degree. I don't have a lot of physical familiarity with Bruce. I'm not quite sure what his experience is. I know for me, I've expressed it to these guys. It's kind of like, as you were saying, I know you alluded to that, Bruce, you know, you're channeling all the time, but I kind of find that, you know, my, whatever you want to say, my higher me, my whatever, in the last while kind of is there all the time. And so when this occurs, uh, it's a pretty simple shift, because it's not like it's so foreign.
Yeah.
And it's a little different than Jane and some other individuals. I'm much more in attendance than you know, what happens with some individuals. And a lot of the a bit of especially before you came in, what was shared with these guys was being flavored by my alter ego, quote unquote.
I know it well. I lived many years with a trance medium, so I'm tracking. You do your thing.
Yeah, cool. So we would like to take the opportunity to greet all of you once again. And as we always do, to express to you our gratitude for the interaction that we have with you in this moment. Because, of course, it lends so very nicely to our exploration. So we thought we would begin with the idea that Chuck touched on a little earlier, which is the vastness of who and what you are, and the we'll use the word struggle in the moment, the struggle that you have sometimes to, in fact, understand that. And the ways that you utilize within your physical life to attempt to open doors to yourself, to give you some hints of the vastness of what you actually are. And you use many tools to do this. You're all familiar, of course, of the concept that you are the one that's creating the reality that you're experiencing. So, if you stand at an ocean port and you have this immense ship in front of you, you are the one that creates the ship. You create the water that you see. You create the docks that you find yourself standing on. You create the equipment that's around you. If you find yourself at an airport and the largest type of jet that you physically make is in front of you, you're the one creating that jet in that moment. Now, of course, it's an idea that's shared throughout the collective, but your experience of that jet is created by you. This idea applies as well to your concepts of UFOs. When a UFO shows up in your reality, it is not another entity that creates that UFO. You are creating the UFO in your experience of the reality. Many of these individuals, we'll utilize that term in this moment, are other aspects of your greater being. They reside within the vastness of what you are. The you of you encompasses an infinite number of dimensions, populated by aspects of consciousness, many different in ways that you could not fathom from this vantage point. When those aspects of consciousness become familiar with you, when they reach out to, in your terms, aid you in your transformation, in this time period of your transformation, they need to utilize symbols that make some sense to you. Otherwise, there is no effect. So when you create ships that you associate with them, you have to create something that makes sense to you. When you create a form that they inhabit, you need to create a shape that makes some sense to you. Otherwise, it will not have the same effect. You will be too lost in trying to figure out what it is to get the message. And this is understood by them. So they utilize symbology that means something within your experience. Otherwise, the message could not be conveyed. They could not provide you with helpfulness in that regard. Now, earlier, Ray was mentioning families of consciousness. The individuals who gather in this format are more familiar with this form of information being shared. Information that you call channeling, perhaps you call it an energy exchange. Others gain information like this in very different ways. Others can interact with a rock or a tree or the wind and get the same information that you get from the individuals that you would call Seth or Abraham or Bashar. It shows up in a different way for them, but it's similar information. Now, regardless of how that shows up, the same mechanism ensues. In other words, you will apply your beliefs to the information that's showing up. It's the nature of your existence. Your existence, this particular physical existence, is filtered through your belief systems. So all the information that you get is going to be filtered through your belief systems, regardless of how it shows up. In this, as you have interacted with individuals that have joined your forum for whatever periods of times that they have, you've noticed that some of those individuals do things a little bit differently. And if you're at a point of connectivity with yourself, you'll recognize there's a different energy field to those individuals. They will approach things in different ways. And this, of course, gives you the opportunity to express acceptance of those individuals, acceptance of the differences, acceptance of the way that information shows up for them, acceptance of the idea of the way that they'll apply their beliefs to that information, and how then they will configure that information to, in that moment, make sense in their life. Not that they may not change that information as they widen their own awareness, but in the moment, that's the way the information is going to show up for them. Because everything that you do is for your benefit, even if it includes others. Especially in this time period, all the things that show up in your life give you the opportunity to understand the reality around you, which is you. So to understand you in a way that you haven't understood yourself to this point. It's always the opportunity to understand more. And this is not, as Chuck and Ray were speaking about earlier, in just an informational way. It's in a knowing way. Once you've walked out into a rainstorm and gotten soaking wet, you understand what it is to walk in the rain. When you have certain experiences on this journey, your awareness of who you are expands as a result of those experiences, even if those experiences are filtered through the beliefs that you have in this moment. Realize that the individuals, the other aspects of yourself, because again, you are vast. The other aspects of yourself that you interact with do not contain more information than you contain. They are only helping you open the doors to the information that is already yours in ways that will catch your attention, in the ways that are interesting to you, in the ways that will prod you to explore deeper and further. As beings of consciousness, if we can say it that way, you have access to all of consciousness. There is no race of beings out there that has access to more information within consciousness than you do. You connect, like they do, with the entirety of consciousness. In your transition period, you would utilize the connections that you have with these other aspects of yourself in the various ways that you will to help you to open those doors, to help you to look behind the curtains that have been blocking your view, to help you to breathe in the air that to this point you haven't breathed in, you haven't allowed yourself to breathe in, largely because there was no curiosity there. This movement of yours stimulates your curiosity, stimulates your asking of the questions. Questions that individuals, let's say in your 18s or 1700s, had no interest in asking by and large. There were only a very few on your planet. Now it's a growing number of individuals because it is a global phenomenon, is it not? So we would leave you with this idea of your own vastness, the resources that are really yours already. And you'll use many ways to rediscover the ability that you have. And all the ways that you bring to yourself, they're all fine. They'll work for you for the time period that they work for you, and then you'll move on to something else. As your awareness widens, that's for Louise. As your awareness widens, you'll use others. Methods that will suit the now new you, if we can phrase it like that. Until at some point, methods will no longer be necessary because your experience of yourself will have changed. You will connect with areas of consciousness that at this point, you can't even imagine what they are. So we'll leave you with that. And we'll, of course, quite open to any inquiries you may have, anything you would like us to develop to a greater degree as well.
Well, you have brought me to a place that matches very well where I have been the last couple of days. And I had an experience with a consciousness that describes itself as coming from the space between stars, never having had any form, but being, if you want to call it that, a frequency civilization. And it sort of identified me as some voice-bearing node. And what was interesting to me is that it posed a question to me as to how I perceive the realm that I'm in. To which I kind of answer in the form of geometry that was reassembling patterns that are in the blueprint for this realm, shifting things. But anyway, that's very widening for me. And I really appreciate the message that you have given. And
So as you,
yes,
as you widen yourself, as you pull back the curtains to areas of yourself that you haven't explored before, these types of interactions will occur. Perhaps we can say more frequently. And as you translated the energy that arrived, maybe we can use the idea of on your doorstep, your response that you provided immediately provided for those aspects all that was necessary. So you're aware that many times when you are interactive with individuals that share information, that there's activity, shall we say, in the background that's going on, changes that are occurring. And so this is part of what this interaction is about for you as well, that there are changes, awakenings occurring within you that will begin to make themselves physically observable. The idea with these types of things is to not to attempt to compartmentalize the interaction, but to allow that interaction to work with you in the way that it's going to work with you, to bring shifts about in you that you will recognize. And it's not necessarily even so important that you can say, yes, this particular increase in my sensitivity, my awareness, whatever you might want to call it, is due to that. That's not important. What's important is just to embrace whatever changes occur. Where it comes from really doesn't make any difference. And this is helpful for you because, again, this is something that all of you have become quite familiar with doing, is the idea of cause and effect. This happened, and then this effect occurred, which is not really the way that it happens. So loosening your grasp on which interaction you had brought about which effect in you is something that will, shall we say, bear fruit for you as well.
Thank you. I am humbled by the message, and I'm humbled by all that this moment brings me.
And in that regard, to use your language, we cannot have this interaction without being, again, in your language, humbled by this interaction with you, if you understand our meaning. In other words, there are
We
no
do.
levels
Yes,
within
I
these
understand.
interactions.
I
It
understand.
is a sharing of equals.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you to say to you. Always a pleasure to make your acquaintance again. I'm sorry, Luis, did you have something else to add? I guess, okay. Um, I have a question about once we assume our light bodies have the Earth's ascension, whatever you want to call it, and telepathy is activated amongst our younger children and others who are interested. How will that affect our languages on the Earth? And if you could provide some kind of timeline, um, because I would assume that it would migrate to something which would be more cohesive, like an individualized language to allow us to communicate easier with the extraterrestrial races and hybrid children. Can you elaborate on that, please?
Your utilization of language on your planet has been part of your, perhaps we can call it your experimentation, your experience of the idea of separation. You mentioned when Bruce first became part of the gathering tonight that you enjoyed individuals who've explored. One of the reasons why that is true is because many times when you're in conversations with an individual like that, it's not, maybe we'll use the word, as much work to have the conversation. There's an exchange of meaning that goes on when two individuals who've explored themselves to a large degree, when they're interacting, there's much meaning that's translated between them without the need for words. You'll find that their conversations are much more abbreviated, yet there's a great deal of information that's been shared. This is what will happen on your planet to a greater degree. You will not need to utilize language in the way that you utilize language any longer. You will utilize language if you choose to utilize language. the idea of different languages will be a moot point at that point in time, because again, it will be a place where you will telepathically, shall we say, have an understanding of what's being conveyed by the other individual. Timelines are variable, as they are in all things, and it will be a personal thing for each individual here. For Luis, and we're just going to pick randomly here. This is not to say that this is what's going to happen. To Luis, it might happen in a 15-year time period. To Bruce, it may happen in a 25-year time period. To Ray, it may happen in a 6-month time period. Now, none of that is to say that that's the way it's going to happen. But again, you're creating your experience of the reality. So when this happens for you, will be when it happens for you. And it may very well seem as though that's when it happened for the entirety of the society. But it has everything to do with how you want to move through your experience. And a faster way is not a better way. It's a different process. It's a different exploration than another way is. And so time periods, again, we understand that it's one of those ideas that coming from the experience that you're very, we'll use the word familiar to you, it's one of those concepts that seems very important to you when things are going to happen. If I do this, will that occur? How much of my doing this will lead me to have this experience? You've had others that have suggested to you that the physically focused mind loves to think in those ways. It loves to control the flow of time. It loves to control the idea of when things will happen. Now, there's nothing wrong with the physically focused mind. You've utilized it to have some very interesting experiences. But as you move into a greater understanding of who you are, your fascination with when things will occur will fall by the wayside. So that will be our answer.
I especially like that last part about fascination with when things will occur. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that answer.
You're quite welcome.
Bruce, you have a question? Yes.
Thank you. What would you say about the idea that the most magical words that exist are I am?
The first thing we would do is we would explore the idea of the definition of magical. Because the definition of magical to most individuals means something that is different enough from what is common to have a special level of importance paid to it. But that only comes from a particular perspective of the experience. When you understand that all expressions of consciousness are as magical as any expression of consciousness, then the idea of what is magical and what is not becomes, again, a moot experience. Many individuals on your planet like to utilize the word divine as well, as if there is some separation between what can be divine and what is not. If all is consciousness, what then is not divine, if you want to utilize that word? Or is anything divine? We could say it like that. So, of course, the idea of I am expresses the totality of consciousness. And that within this movement that you're all within, the reality of knowing yourself as all of consciousness will move closer, shall we say. So many times, even in the questions that individuals will ask, the ways that you have used language on your planet and the way that you consider words, the ideas that you associate with the words, sometimes are so very familiar to you that you walk right beyond them. You don't see what it is you're doing with your perception of your reality because you are so used to it. Again, it's not that it's wrong at all, but it provides a particular type of an experience. So we would certainly expand on that if there's more that you'd like.
That was my feeling. Please do.
This is something that all of you will do as well. As you consider the words that you use, the words that make up your language, the meanings that those words have, as you may recognize, looking, shall we say, back, maybe in the last 80 years or so, and how in this country, in the United States, you have folded new words into your language, and how those words and the meanings that they were given in other cultures aided you in your expansion of your thought processes, allowed your ideas to explore in ways that you hadn't in terms of time prior to that. This will be a phenomenon that will continue. You will utilize and understand how language many times plays a role in packaging your experience. And so as you move into a freer understanding of yourself, along the lines of some of what Ray was expressing, your language, your use of language will also change, because you will no longer package yourselves in the same way. And so the language that you use will be a reflection of that. And so the idea then of something that is miraculous, something that is out of the ordinary, will take on an entirely different meaning than what those words have had for, in terms of time, many centuries.
You were focusing on the words magic.
Indeed, magic and miraculous.
Would you focus on the words I am?
I am, indeed. And of course, it's quite simple, is it not? You are. And if we were going to speak in a Zen master type of way, we might say, what else is there to say about that concept? You are. What are you not?
Feel free to enjoy yourself saying more about it.
It is part of your exploration, is it not? To have concepts and ideas show up in association with words, to explore those concepts and ideas, again, in association with the movements that you're all going through. to reach deeper into yourself with these ideas, with this phrase, I am. What does this phrase mean? Get inklings through various cultures. You get ideas, you explore the ideas. You're exploring yourself as you do that. I am. What does I am mean? How is I am expressed? It's expressed like this, as one of the infinite ways that I am is expressed. It's expressed in total validity as this. It's a race of beings that have seemingly forgot who and what they are. I am expresses itself as fully in that way as it does in any other way. It's only within the experience that the experience is judged. Within the experience, you cannot see all of what the experience is. You do not see the changes that it brings to all that you are. Yes, within the experience, you now feel constrained. That feeling constrained, we will remind you, is a new feeling. For many thousands of years, you did not feel constrained within your experience. You feel constrained only because you're moving to a different experience. That feeling of being constrained incites you to explore, excites you to explore I am. Allows, facilitates, perhaps we would rather say, within your experience, movement, exploration. You have been within your experience content within your experience for, in terms of time, long periods of time. This is no longer true. Your exploration in that regard began with what you would term technology, exploring within the environment of what you knew, what you believed to be true, and pushing that as far as you could. It was a preamble to what you are now doing, which is the actual exploration. We almost would like to withdraw that because, again, it almost means that the exploration that in terms of time you have just finished was not incredibly valuable and valid, because of course it was. But in terms of this idea of I am, it was, as you're aware, in a sense, hidden from you as you had the bulk of your physical experience. And this feeling of being constrained, this desire to move beyond this feeling of being constrained, and it being expressed in many walks of life, is about all of that. What am I? And as your transformative period comes to what we may call a close, which of course is not actually the ending of anything, as you're aware, you will have a much larger understanding of what those two words I am mean and how that's expressed. It will be from the vantage point that most seekers have at this point, quite surprising to you. Because you still look to your experience to try to figure out what your upcoming experience will be. And it will fail you in that regard. We will suggest it will be quite surprising to you. And with that, we will tie up our exploration of I am. Unless, of course, there is further exploration that you have.
That was beautiful. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, Ray?
Yeah, I have a question about after humanity has global extraterrestrial contact, can you tell us a few of the things which will surprise humanity most? I mean, we know there's going to be energy and the erosion of national boundaries and identities and other advances in other areas, but I know there are things which will surprise us, which are coming along, other than, like telepathy and stuff like that, but whatever you feel free to expound upon.
One of the concepts that we see the one individual that within, perhaps we will use the idea, these circles, the circle of extraterrestrial contact, who is perhaps the most prominent in that. One of the things that we are aware that they struggle with is conveying to the individuals that they interact with that this is not predominantly a physical experience in the way that many individuals still believe it's going to be. This individual has mentioned to individuals that this is a experience that will occur as they widen their awareness of who and what they are. Most individuals do not pay attention to that. Most individuals skip right beyond that. They focus instead on, again, the experience that they know, the earth that they know. This is not, we will suggest to you, what your experience is going to be about. Your experience is going to be about your shift, your widening, your awareness of other dimensional individuals as you allow yourself that facilitation of yourself. Your planet will not be the same. You will not live in the same way on your planet. You will not have the same awareness on your planet. You will not consider your planet in the way that you consider your planet now. It will be considered very differently. You are not having individuals show up to save you. You have information, and we're not speaking so much to the group in front of us, but to most other individuals. You have had individuals around you now for at least a half a century that have been sharing information with you. Information to help you understand the wider nature of who and what you are. They understand, all of these individuals understand that it is not about saving you. It's not about them stepping into your experience and them altering your experience. They lead you into your experience, and they do it in the fashion that is natural for them to do that, in the way that catches your attention, in the way that excites you, in the way that gets you to explore, in the way that prompts you to ask the questions, to want to open the doors. to explore more of who or what you are. So the planet will change not so much because of individuals who will join you in your experience, but rather you will change the experience. Will they aid you in that? Yes, but think of the individuals that are already sharing information with you now. They aid you in your experience, but it's you that utilizes that information. It's your movement that opened the doors to those individuals being there in the first place.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question or comment?
Much appreciative of the time and the knowledge and the wisdom. Grateful to say to, as always.
We have a deep level of enjoyment when we interact with individuals who've explored, as all of you have. It allows us to share, perhaps we'll say, layers of information that otherwise we don't frequently get to share.
We love that about you, Diseto.
And in your
Indeed.
terms, we love that about you.
Right back at you. Thank you.
Welcome back, Mr. Chuck.
Yeah,
Mr.
that felt like a lot of fun,
Mr. Chuck was there all the time, you know.
largely. As it's it's an interesting, it's been such an interesting process. So just for Bruce, just because we haven't had a chance to talk. So, there was one time where I was chatting with these guys and I kind of talked about the progression of this whole thing for myself. I began an audio podcast, maybe 2.5 years ago. I'm not sure what it was, in there someplace. And I began, and because it's an audio podcast, when I would edit it, of course, I have to listen to the whole thing. And so I would go, there would be times where I would go, I don't remember saying that, or I'm listening to me talk and I'm going, that seems different than how I typically would say things. Like there's a different energy there. And so I realized that there was another layer of me that was showing up. And then I looked back at some blogging that I used to do, and I would see it in that as well. And so I've been associated with a group that is associated with a guy out of Toronto, Canada. His name is Serge Granbois. He's shown up here a few times, and he is the name of the aspect of consciousness that he channels is termed Chris. And so I've been familiar with that for a long time. So there's a group of individuals that I've become quite familiar with. And so we get together still every Sunday in the morning. And so I asked these guys about 1.5 years ago or so, hey guys, how'd you feel if I started practicing channeling with you guys intentionally, in other words? And they said, yeah, sounds good. So I started playing with that. So after about 1 year, and I was feeling fairly comfortable doing that, it's been about a half a year now, Luis, that I joined you guys the first time.
Yeah, something like that.
Someplace. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had become familiar with Ray online, various Facebook groups. And he just said, hey, we got this group that, we have individuals who are kind of like just getting into their channeling. We're kind of utilizing that as, like a little format to nurture individuals along. I said, yeah, sounds nice, And so I joined these guys, and then of course they opened up another night which is tonight because it was originally Thursdays. And then there's a group on Friday that I've been interacting with, and a couple others as well. And it's been nice because it helps me to become more comfortable in the whole of the process. And as I'm more comfortable in the process, then the ability to become aware of the information that floats in is easier, I guess. And the comprehension of what's attempting to be expressed shows up with it as well, in a way that it didn't at first. So I'm enjoying it. It's been really cool. And as I mentioned before, and of course, individuals have this show up in their lives in a whole variety of ways, but that dialogue is kind of like a day-long dialogue now for me. It's just there, which is very, very cool.